Greetings fellow mammals, CloakingDonkey here, and I think it is my personal duty to tell you about the upcoming patch for Dark Age of Camelot. To some of you this might actually come as a surprise, but Dark Age of Camelot is still around. And it is even still being worked on, and while the content updates aren't as frequent as they used to be, because the studio running it now is also of course not as big as it used to be, Broadsword, the company running it, are definitely pouring in a lot of love. And so I thought I'd tell you about the patch and maybe it inspires you to pick this game up again and give it another go. So 1.121, the patch in question, is a huge patch. I'm not going to read the entire patch notes to you because that could take an hour, easily. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview, and if it tickles your fancy, do think about maybe giving the game another go. First up, there is now a contribution-based reward system during keep sieges in RVR. Basically how this works is if you're the attacker, as soon as you kill the keep lord, that is when you receive your bonus RP. And if you're the defender, as soon as all attackers within the vicinity of the keep are dead, that is when it counts as successfully defended and you get your bonus RP. And the bonus realm points that you get are based on the realm points that you already earned during the keep siege for killing people and reviving people. This means that you don't really get any bonus points for just AFKing. You are encouraged to kill as many people as possible to get more bonus realm points. And this of course also encourages defending more, because you will have a good chance of killing all the defenders and receiving a bunch of points. If you kill everyone within the vicinity and that raid comes back, you have a new chance to build up bonus RP. At least I think that's how it's going to work. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. But if that's how it works, I think it's really cool, because yes, I think the defense must give a good amount of reward to encourage people to actually defend. And with all the PvP dungeon access and the bonus RP, I really do think defending could be more interesting now. Next up, crafting timers have been normalized across all the professions. This means that while you are skilling up your craft, the craft timer doesn't get longer and longer to the point where it was, I think, in the olden days of DAOG, it was something like 2 minutes for a craft timer sometimes, and that is just a little bit too much. So it will be much more manageable numbers now, and while the timer will still get longer the higher you go in your craft, it won't be anywhere near as ridiculous as it was before. And some of the really early level ones might also be a bit longer than they were before, because some of them just were basically instant. So some of these might now take a second or two to craft, but at least you won't have to deal with the ridiculously long crafting timers up at that legendary Grandmaster anymore. And it will of course also make it far less of a pain in the ass for new players to start crafting, because let's face it, crafting never was very new player friendly in Dark Age of Camelot, so anything to help that I think is a good idea. And then we have an insane amount of class changes. So many balance changes, a lot of classes have gained a bunch of new abilities, and there really is so much it's practically impossible to cover it all. So I'll pick out some of the things that I think are highlights. Buffing and support classes have gotten more active abilities. This is something really important, because there definitely always were a few buffing and support classes that just didn't end up having that much to do once the combat actually started. Buffing shamans, for example, were always a bit low. Sure, they could do their buff shearing, but just taking away enemy buffs isn't always that interesting, so it's nice to give them a few more active abilities so that they actually have cool stuff to do. One of the changes I'm most excited about is that light tanks now get charge without having to spend realm points. They just get it passively while leveling up. This is super exciting, because charge is one of those abilities that is just absolutely necessary for a light tank to even really function in PvP. And getting this while you level up is the best solution I could think of for this problem. It definitely makes me want to go back and play my light tank again, because now I'll have the highest ranks of charge without having to spend any of my realm points, and I'll actually be able to spend them on something crazy like improved critical chance. Song classes now have lesser speed buffs. These speed buffs don't speed the party up as much as their regular speed songs, but they are not broken by damage received, so you can actually use them in combat to chase people down, or reversely to run away from people that are shooting at you. I love this and think it's a great addition for song classes and makes them a little bit more relevant and gives them something more to do than just switch into healing or damage mode once the combat begins. And apparently assassins get their alpha strike back. Now I'm going to admit that it has been a few years since I actually played Dark Age of Camelot, so I'm not entirely sure what they are talking about with again. I didn't know that assassins ever lost their alpha strike, but they must have, because now they have it back. So rejoice, assassins, you'll be able to perforate arteries again and absolutely smush squishies in the face before they can do anything about it. One of the more global changes is that they made CC a bit more relevant again. CC was downgraded a lot over the years with a lot of abilities that just passively kind of countered it. CC became less and less interesting, except for a group alpha strike sort of situation. And so they've reworked it in a lot of ways, given it a lot of active countermeasures instead of passive countermeasures. So for example, there's a lot more classes with Mez heal and stun heal now, and at the same time CC has been improved in various ways. And all the remaining changes can basically be described as underused specs have received an enormous facelift. I also think that this is something that was absolutely necessary for Dark Age of Camelot, because over the years the meta has very much formed and there were a lot of specs that just weren't good enough to be used, because other specs on those classes were just so much better. And so plenty of specs have received cool new abilities, like the creeping path of the Animist has received healing mushrooms, which is really cool, kind of turning the Animist into an interesting support class with a lot of CC and diseases and heals. That is something that I'm personally really interested in, and I might actually go and check that out. Because I always like playing Animist, and having a bunch more cool stuff in creeping path instead of just going for a boreal path, that sounds like my cup of tea. And there are plenty more changes in this absolutely humongous patch. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick look at patch 1.1214 Dark Age of Camelot. But until then, I've been the CloakingDonkey, and I'll see you in another video.